So here you can see the hydraulic line sticking out of the transmission after it was installed. That's actually connected to the slave cylinder or the throwout bearing. Right now it's just threading up into the engine bay, not currently connected to anything, but that's what we're going to get into next, is connecting it and then bleeding our system. Here's another one of those little annoyances, like no one actually read the directions that they created. So I need to mount my reservoir for the hydraulic clutch, right? Well, the instructions say, but include no images, that I'm supposed to take this bracket and I'm supposed to remove the bolts, the two driver's side bolts from the brake master cylinder, and then attach this bracket. What two bolts? What are you talking about? It's one bolt on each side. Are you talking about the booster? I already went through all of that. It's like taking the booster off. And then this bracket, I don't even think the bolt hole spacing is correct. So anyway, it's one of those little annoying things to me. Even if I wanted to like fit it over this, the hole's not the right size, right? So I'd have to drill that out. I believe, I'm not sure where they originally mounted. I'll have to look. But I got a big blank space over here that I could just mount the reservoir right to the firewall. I think it should be out of the way of everything. So I'm going to go check real quick, see if I can find some pictures of other situations. But I feel like just taking this and just screwing it right to that might be the easiest solution. Maybe not the best solution, but definitely the easiest solution. So yeah, I'm going to look into that, try to figure out what I'm going to do with this thing, but I don't know what they're talking about removing two bolts. Maybe if this was like a manual brake truck, I don't know. Check your work, folks. Check your work. So I got something worked out for the time being. I took out one of the bolts for my windshield wiper motor, and so I just have it connected right now with a single bolt through the one ear. It's pretty secure. I wouldn't want to crank on it or I'll probably bust that off. So that seems to have left almost an exact half-inch gap for the other side. So what I'm going to do at some point, I'm going to run to the hardware store and see if there's something I can pick up as like a half-inch spacer, and then just drill a screw, through that into the firewall to hold the other side. But for now, it's pretty secure. I'm pretty happy with that. So there's a couple things that I need to do here. So I have a high pressure fitting here, and then the low fill fitting here. Now there's a nut on the bottom of it that can be turned, so you can clock this in different directions, right, depending on where you put your reservoir. I'm pretty happy with that location and that angle. So let me just go ahead and snug that down. And that looks to be maybe something like so it's probably a 15 millimeter or a 5/8. So I'm just going to give that a quick little snug, just to make sure that that's, seated good enough. And again, with my PCM, I don't have a ton of room to work. Okay, that feels good. So the other thing I have is this is the high pressure line. Now in the instructions, it's a little bit unclear. There's this brass fitting on here that looks like on some kits is going to have a 90-degree tube to connect to. Obviously I don't have that. What I have is sort of almost like what you'd see on a brake caliper, like this block, right, with a bolt with some copper washers in there. What I'm going to do is remove this brass fitting, because that obviously is not going to go on there like that. Let's try a 13. Yep. So we'll do a 13 millimeter, and we'll remove this guy, because they haven't provided me with any fittings that look like they would work with this. Instead, what they've provided, like I said, is this. Let's see what we've got. Let's take one of my washers out. Get my other washer on here. Let's see if I can finagle. So I'm just going to let mine sort of loop up and around. If I try to go straight up this way, I don't think it would make a very good path. It would be sort of bending back towards my exhaust manifold. So I feel like this is going to be okay. So what size is this? Is this also a 13? This one is a 12. It's again not going super crazy, but I just want to make sure that that's snug on there. And then the last thing I need to do here is I need to connect the hose between the reservoir and that. So there's a little cap on here, remove that. And this is going to have to be cut to fit. Let's see, looks like about, so we'll go to about there. Make sure we got plenty of engagement. So the good news is if you screw this up, they give you plenty of extra tubing. And make sure we get our other clamp. And then get that pressed up into the bottom of the reservoir. Try not to break that ear off. Let's go ahead, get our clamps. There you go, just so you can get a closer look of what I've got done there. Like I said, used one of the mounting bolts for the windshield wiper motor, short section of hose, connected this in place of that little brass fitting. That line runs down to the slave cylinder in the transmission. I think we're good. So for the other side of that clutch fluid reservoir, the one that's not currently connected to the windshield wiper motor, I ended up getting a little 1/2-inch spacer from Lowe's and an 1.5-inch sheet metal screw that's stainless steel. And so that's what I'm going to use to connect that other side to the firewall. It's exactly a 1/2 inch, so that spacer is going to fix that problem. And then I've already pre-drilled a hole to go through there just to give me some support to the other side. So pretty easy fix, but that's what I ended up picking up from Lowe's to handle that situation. So one of the last things that I want to do before putting fluid in the system is I need to install this linkage. So this linkage goes between the push rod on the back of the master, and then this is going to connect to the hole that I created in the clutch pedal. Now I talked about this before. This is using this sort of swivelly ball joint with this offset stud or bolt. For now, I'm going to go with this. At some point, I may end up replacing this threaded end with something that's going to work on the actual stock clutch pedal. But for now, we're just going to follow the instructions. So I'm going to go ahead and get this mounted in. Just so you can see what I'm talking about. So that up there, that's the push rod coming out of the back of the new master cylinder. And then, so you can turn upwards. Up there is the hole that I drilled in the clutch pedal. So I'm not gonna be able to film while I get this. I'm gonna thread it on real quick and then show you what it looks like when it's done. So we got the push rod installed. Now, like a lot of things, I didn't see a lot of guidance as far as stroke or making sure this doesn't bottom out. The one bit of adjustment that it did say was to have the push rod all the way out of the master before you set your pedal height. Okay, fair enough. But as far as like allowing it to push too deeply or what the actual like amount of throw allowed is, there wasn't really anything about that. What I tried to do was I tried to allow for this to go all the way down until I felt it bottom out in the master cylinder. Then I adjusted it just slightly enough so that there's like a contact pad up there, like a pedal stop. So I adjusted it out just enough that it contacts the pedal stop before it bottoms out the master cylinder. So that way when I'm, ramming the clutch pedal down, I'm not bottoming out the master cylinder real hard. I'm hitting that pedal stop up there first. So I don't know if that's the best way to go about this. That's what seemed to make logical sense to me, so that's what I've done. And you can see you got the bolt going through the pedal up there, the push rod. I do need to torque the nuts down a little bit to tighten it and make sure it doesn't back out at all. But basically, that's pretty much in there. So a quick note on that. I said about there wasn't a lot of guidance given on the clutch pedal. So there actually is. It's just not, it's on a different sheet. it says that you don't want the master cylinder to bottom out. So I feel like I've got it set up correctly, right? So I feel like I've gotten the maximum amount of throw that I can without hitting the bottom of the master cylinder. So there is guidance to that. It was just a little bit tougher to find than I expected. Something else I'm going to try to come up with a solution for is this. That play, that's crap. Okay, I know that this is what Silver Sport came up with, but that's like an inch of travel down here at the, at the pedal end. That's crap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to come up with a solution using the original push rod and the original pin that's on the actual, clutch pedal. So I did try to create something. I took and cut the eyelet off the original factory master cylinder. It is part of the same assembly, so it's not like you can't unthread it. I found a bolt of the correct thread to use with the sleeve provided by Silver Sport, tack welded them together, and created more of a fixed assembly. However, the adapter for the master that Silver Sport provides, I believe, is at a different angle than the original. So when I tried to create this and I tried to use it, I ended up with a clutch engagement that wasn't very smooth, and it was actually pushing the push rod at an angle that didn't look good to me. So I ended up just adding a washer so that I could really tighten down the Silver Sport assembly, and which removed most of the slop. So now I'm going to try to do a little bleeding of the clutch. We can see that the bleeder is actually pretty well available. So I've already gone ahead and connected a rubber hose down to a bottle, and that bleeder is currently loose. So what Silver Sport tells us is to go ahead and start adding fluid to the reservoir, leave the bleeder open, and let gravity sort of pull everything down. It does say if there's some kind of problem that we may have to loosen the lines down there, the high pressure line, I think it said. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. We're going to go ahead and try to fill this up now. Now, as far as their perfect fit kit, they do include all of the fluids for the transmission, brake-in fluid, plus the actual fluid you're supposed to keep in it then. They also include the brake fluid here for the hydraulic master. They recommend .4, so this is just some Redline .4, pretty fancy stuff. I'd probably buy a lot cheaper fluid than that. Let's go ahead and try to add some fluid in here without making a gigantic mess. I will point out that Silver Sport says this is a two-person job, and that's probably true. But I'm just one person, so we're just going to let that gravity bleed, and I'm going to keep walking back and forth to check for fluid coming out of the line, out of that, bleeder hose. So I am actually getting some fluid out of there already. So it says we're supposed to be doing all of this slowly. Loosen the bleeder screw, press the pedal all the way down, and then release it, and then tighten and release it slowly. So let's open the bleeder screw, press slowly. A lot of air bubbles there. So let's tighten this back up. And let's go back and look at our reservoir. That drew some of it down. Let's just keep rinse and repeat, right? Loosen, press slowly. Watching all those air bubbles come out. Tighten and release. This could totally be a one-person job as long as you don't have a floor. Okay, I'm not seeing any fluid leaking from up here, so that's good. I almost feel like that's going too well. So there's a little bit of free play right at the beginning, and then there's some resistance, and then right there, right towards the bottom is where it frees up. I will say with my stubby little legs, I think I might have to move my seat up a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. Like I said, I can bleed it again a little bit more in a couple of days. Let the system just sort of gravity bleed itself a bit. We're going to call that good for the time being. Let's go ahead and get our little rubber boot in there. Bled just a little bit of liquid out of it. Yeah, that's pretty full. All right. So with that, I think we can go ahead and scratch this section off the list. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you in the next video.